So here we are on our next video. I'm going to be playing around with the blob. You can probably see I haven't really taken too much time to close any of these out. The blob is fun. It's very interesting to play around with, and it can come out with some pretty cool results. So right now, if we go to renderers, we have a few things. We have meshes, we have basics. Sometimes it does become a bit of a hassle to try and find everything, so sometimes I might take a pause and scurry through this little library of modules. So for the blob, it is a type of texture, and the blob would be considered a particle, one single particle, but you can make it or treat it as a multi-particle system. Textures are rendered directly into the graphics card, so that's a big thing there. Now, one thing you'll notice is we cannot directly connect this blob to our screen. This is a square and nothing. Now, if you've done those little tests where you try to put the square inside of the circle hole, this is kind of the same idea. What we want to do is, renderers normally has our particular bits and pieces we want to use in order to render certain things. Those things being anything of an image that we're trying to do. We're going to go into basic again. We have a colored rectangle with which we played with last time. We're going to use textured rectangle. This is going to give us an access from texture to texture, and then our blank circle to blank circle. So there's our blob. Not very interesting. It looks okay. I can also change the size or the bits, if you may. It's a different quality. I'm going to leave it at 128 for now. Now, the blob has a few settings on its own. Arms, particularly being no arms at the moment, and that's why it's a circular blob, as you can see. If I play around with this little guy, as soon as I hit 1, notice that the decimals don't do anything. So 1 technically is still single. 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice that it is doing something. There are some little arms in there. We can't really see them. That's because the attenuation is a little bit too little. If I focus it up a little bit, we get to about the 1's a good amount. Now we have a star-like thing. I'm gonna go further. I like it pointy. It being determined by whatever you want to picture in your mind. So there's our blob, and there's our arms, and we can set these to be automatically altered, so we can have different arms happening with different sounds. Right now, I'm going to leave this set at about a 5. How about that? Now, if you can't get a correct number and you get some weird stuff, you can click up here and kind of take off all those extra decimals, press enter, and it'll automatically set it to the number you're looking at. You can click anywhere really to set whatever number you want, and you can do it to any number-based text. If I double click on the color, we have a little color palette. Right now it's somewhere over in the white area, so I'm going to move that over to, let's make it red-ish. There we go. And double click to, oh, well, careful where you double click. Now, of course, you'll see angle again. You can edit that if you want for it to reach a particular angle. Notice also that we're going to have angle here as well. They essentially function in similar fashions. This one's more in tune with the shape. This one is the filter between the shape and the screen. So they do the same thing, but one is a little bit more touchy than the other. One thing to know about the actual modules, if it's not on your list or if it's not on your screen, it's most likely a preset. What I mean by that is there's already certain values set automatically when the modules do not exist. So if I go to OpenGL modifiers, say I pick a, already got a color, let's do rotate. We can create its own rotation here in between. Now we have the same controls, as you can see the angle here, except we have one extra bit of information, and that's the axis that we are rotating on. Right now it's the z-axis. If I rotate it, there you go. You can also give it a y-axis rotation, so that gives it a 3D feel, or all of the above. And each one of these knobs can be changed, and I'll show you how in a second. Right now it's 0 to 1, so there's our rotating star. But if you need more precise measurements, you can use the top knob here to increase the highest value available. So now we go from 0 to 3.2378, just like it's deducted up here. Now it's going to rotate more over the x-axis than any of the others. Again, remember x, y, and z. That's for any sort of angle-based system. If you do colors, it's R, G, B, and then alpha. Many times these extra modules are a little, unnecessary. You can control them within the controllers here. The size, for instance. I can also use scale or translate for the actual position. But in some cases, you may want to use the scale, because it's got some extra features that normally you won't see. So there's our regular sort of X, Y, and Z scaling methods. If I increase our area, so on. But take a look at this little extra bit at the bottom, where now we have model view, so one individual model. If we want to create a texture-based system here, we can mush a bunch of these little stars together. X or Y or Z axis doesn't really do much, but here's a few things you can play around with. So now if I actually, let's say, play with the angle, all of them, yep, there you go, all of them will kind of rotate around, and boom. This, and here's kind of your difference between rotations. This will rotate the whole image. Again, this is going to be a module that takes into consideration all of the blobs together as one. This one takes one individual instance and rotates it. Alright, so that's fun. Let's go ahead and put something in there so we can get a little music going. Not too shabby. It can definitely kind of work with my voice a bit. Now what if you just don't want them to be so drastically connected to sound? What if you just want a simple motion? Well, life is fun. Life is very predictable. In many cases you can consider waves or frequencies to be one of the basic motions or spatial attributes to space and time. I've got some oscillators right here. Let's see, I'm just going to pick a simple oscillator, plug that into my angle. Now, it's not going by my voice or the music, it's simply going by sine wave. Right now it's got a simple small frequency. I can increase that to increase the speed of motion. The amplitude is a little bit low as well for the strength of what it's doing. Now a sine wave is very particular. It likes to move the direct path between left and right. So it goes from left to right and everything in between, then right to left and everything in between. So that's why it's moving in a rocking motion. I like to use the saw, as it has a particular characteristic from left to right, then magically appears to the left again, move to the right again, and that creates a seamless movement. In this case, a little off. There we go. So now they're just rotating around in their little plane. Again, frequency is the speed in which it goes. So I can take that down and make it smoother. Almost looks like a windmill going around, like a bunch of them together. And that's one of the cool things about your oscillator. Now the rest of them, you can kind of play around and get a little feel for them. You've got a square, which is one or the other. It's either left or right. You can barely see that movement. There, it's a little bit better now. So it's either left or right. It doesn't take any step in between the motion. Triangle. You can notice a movement and then the movement back. It's a longer sort of sine wave, but again, you would have to understand particular frequencies to understand what's happening exactly. So we've got an oscillator here. It's doing kind of our job for us. We've got extra options as well if you want to play around with those. But here's another cool trick. You can plug in extra bits and pieces into the oscillator. And I use the oscillator to create a nice smooth motion so it's not too jerky. And I can put this in the phase. Now it's gonna, well, it's not too apparent. It's supposed to kind of give it an extra boost whenever there's loud music, but it does kind of flow with the music itself. Let's do the frequency, that's the speed. Still not good enough. Ha! Hello! Hello! Do stuff! Kinda works. A little bit. But there's ways you can mod or use modules in between your source and your objective of what you want to do with some mathematical deduction in between. Alright, so that's a little bit here. I'm going to go with some better examples on the next one, a few creations that I've made, and I'm actually going to take it apart and play around with that.